Yes, so we continue with our third section. I think our two section hosts, you will introduce yourself vice versa, so I don't have to do that. So I just have to ask everybody to come up. I think my voice will be heard downstairs too, to proceed for the conference. So the floor is yours.
We'll introduce ourselves. Yes, as we know ourselves the best. So, welcome to the first panel today, which will focus on activism and activism at the housing estates. My name is Kacper Kępiński. I'm the deputy director of the National Institute of Architecture and Urban Planning in Warsaw. Before specialized mostly in the architectural exhibitions and international cooperation within the institute, but also I used to work with Michał Wiśniewski, who was part of the panel, and in Krakow Institute of Architecture. And my co-host, Klara.
Thank you, Kacper. My name is Klara Preschneiderová, and I'm working in the Slovak Design Center as a researcher and curator. And I thought that the best would be to introduce myself with a small personal statement that I'm very happy that activism is an important part of this conference, because 10 years ago I was also part of an activist group which helped establishing the first design museum in Slovakia. So this is for me like the best section, or not the best, but somehow also a personal section for me. And I'm very happy to be here and that you are also here in our section.
Yeah, same for me. It all started with activism. So our first speaker here, it's also activist and politician and architect and urban planner, Zofia Piotrowska, also editor in RZUT quarterly magazine and a doctoral student at the Architecture Faculty of Warsaw University of Technology. She specializes in affordable and cooperative housing, and since April 2024, she's an elected official in Warsaw District Council. And today, the most important is that she is also a co-founder of and a board member of WSPÓŁ Association for Housing that she will speak of. So that's enough for now for association. But the worth mentioning is also that Zofia is preparing the exhibition Housing a Product in Warsaw Pavilion of Architecture Zodiac, which will accompany this conference as a extension of the topics that we are talking here in Warsaw. And we can also already invite you for the site events and the exhibition itself starting on November 15. Okay.
Yeah, I will also explain why I've chosen to have sort of so many different activities that I'm involved in. Should I start the timer somehow?
We started here.
We started it here.
Yeah, but it would be good to see how much time I have left. Okay, so so I will continue on a topic that we already started yesterday, which is that those robust, open, and socially mixed spaces also need robust, open organizational structures that are behind them. Maybe next slide. So this is what we wanted to do in the association, to propose such organizational models to realize new projects or to transform projects, but in such a way that they become those socially open spaces. So we started maybe a bit optimistically when we started the association with two working groups, one which was very optimistic, which was called Now, and that was a group of people who wanted to start a project immediately, and one maybe more pragmatic with people who wanted to start a senior co-housing in a perspective of 20 years. Next slide. But we quickly changed our area of work into more promotion and kind of lobbying and trying to find a way to actually realize this kind of projects, because we realized that this is not so simple to start realizing the project immediately. Next. So the promotion was actually the easiest one. We organized public lectures and events, and the social interest was very big, and we never had a problem with attendance when we organized those meetings. Next. Then we also wanted to become like a network of organizations. So we were looking to different partnerships that could support our aims. And not only those small ones, this is a senior co-housing in like a smaller countryside in Poland. But it shows that it's very easy to find people with same aims and goals, to have them involved in the association and with our work. Next. And then a topic that I want to develop a little bit further is lobbying for systemic change. And here you can see talk or like a discussion we did with a minister, Agata Twardo, who will be here also as a speaker on the closing panel. And something that also, the topic that also was mentioned yesterday, CEO of a housing cooperative, but this kind of post-socialist big housing cooperative. Next slide, please. So why we are lobbying for systemic change, it also is connected to different type of heritage, different type of post-socialist heritage, and I think many people will also be familiar here with this. We inherited certain institutions that I personally see as maybe a resource that we could profit from, while other people maybe are thinking that this is something we should get rid of. But for sure we need to kind of transform our thinking about those institutions and transform those institutions themselves to actually profit from them and use them in a sustainable way. So when we were thinking about legal models that we could use for our projects, we considered several. There are Baugruppen, which were kind of introduced recently in Polish legislation, but they don't have this common ownership and this social long-term sustainability. There are housing corporation, which is actually a Western model that was implemented in Poland in the 90s. It was based on the French or Dutch kind of corporations. We were considering being like a not-for-profit company, but this is not really working well with the issue of developing a housing project. So we really wanted to go, and it was very clear for us that we should start a tenant housing cooperative. But then this post-socialist heritage kind of came into play and became a certain obstacle in making our project viable and realizing it. Next project. So this is when I wanted to talk about the housing cooperatives in Poland. As in many other countries, they were established around like end of 19th century, 20th century, but actually they were mainly owner cooperatives. In the interwar period, we had a very interesting organization, Warsaw Cooperative Housing Cooperative, which was a tenant cooperative with very strong social goals. So this is a reference point that we started, and then next slide, please. But in the post-war period, as also I know that in Czechoslovakia and Hungary at the time was sort of a similar system, housing cooperatives took on a bit of a different role. So they were not kind of organized by the members, but they were very state control, publicly financed. And what I see also as a problem is that the members, people didn't really have a choice either to become a member. This was the only possible solution to actually fulfill your housing needs, to become a member of a housing cooperative. And there were a lot of those owner cooperatives, which is a bit of a tricky model. But actually in Poland, which I was even surprised to find out in my research, the tenant cooperatives were very highly present. And for example, in Warsaw in the 70s, 20% or even one-fourth of the apartments was tenant cooperative apartments. Next slide. But then we had the transformation, and this is what we're dealing with, and the problem we're dealing with mostly right now, that there was a similar transformation as maybe you're familiar with the British one, the right to buy to the tenants. We talked about it also yesterday night. And this right to buy still remains in force in Polish legislation. So if we wanted to start a tenant cooperative, a tenant could still buy out his own apartment, the one that he's renting. So it really makes the whole project not like long-term sustainable in terms of rental housing. So next slide, please. But anyways, we didn't give up, and we wanted to kind of work on maybe more complex legal models that could profit from that, but that could make our projects socially sustainable and like open for the future. So we were thinking of a housing cooperative of legal entities, which would be based on 3 pillars. What would be either municipalities or like foundations or charities that provide housing, or the existing housing cooperatives that we see still as a partner for future cooperation. And then there would be like an NGO or a trust that would ensure that the project will not be privatized or that would remain like rental housing. And then the association of tenants. So it is also very important for us that there is this democratic governance of the project and that people self-organize and self-manage themselves. So we were very happy that we found out the model we would like to proceed in, but then we ran into another obstacle, which is the access to land. And next slide, please. And here we have the very recent heritage we're dealing with, meaning the current system, which is really bad legislations regarding land. So this is really very recent. 2019, the lease of land for housing use was cancelled, and we don't have it anymore in Poland because it was too complicated as a legal system. And you know, this neoliberal idea that it has to be either private or public was really pushed for. And even in Warsaw, our current administration transformed this leased land into ownership with a 98% discount. So this was like another privatization of public land, but no one really discussed it in such a... It was not really talked about either by the professional circles, or it was just accepted that they went on with it. Next slide, please. So this is complicated and we're still working on that, but I'm maybe not going to go into details about that. But next slide. But we see that there is also a shift in public opinion. Maybe this is a bit too complicated for such a short talk, but we can see that before public was more interested in having mortgage subsidies. People wanted to get like public financing so that the government would help them in the buying apartment. But this is recently shifting a lot, and also public help for affordable rental is finally seen by the people as a viable solution, and also like a model that we should developing. So we see that we are maybe, hopefully, a right movement and right organization in the right time. And I will just finish, next slide please, with my own position and somehow why I'm having so many hats and so many jobs at the moment. So I was an architect and an urban planner, and I just wanted to do like nice projects that would be like nice program for society, and I didn't want to work for like market developers. So next. So then we founded the association that could become such an investor and that could enable us to actually have those projects. Next. Then we've seen that there are some obstacles in the system, so I became a PhD researcher on the topic of existing housing cooperatives and actually their land resources. But then we've seen that the legislation actually is stopping us from, for example, starting a tenant cooperative. So last slide. So then I became more politically involved, and that's why I became also a district council member this spring in my district in Warsaw. So I also am very curious about other activists, how they're trying to push for their ideas and proceed with that. So I look forward for the discussion. And next slide, please. And that will be it from me.